There are questions from the floor, because we want this to be a bit more interactive, that's why I like to call it forward, okay? So if you have questions from any speakers, please let me know, or somebody on the top tables, Reverend Hannah or myself, or Pastor Lowe there, Eli Lowe. Give him your questions, or we might just, if we have time, get you to stand up and ask him with the roving mic here, which would be even better. So there's a couple of additions to the programme, which is wonderful. We have John Allardyce, Lord John Allardyce, former Speaker of the Assembly, probably the most famous Speaker of the Assembly. I personally can't remember too many other Assembly speakers. Allardyce is forever etched in my mind as the ultimate sort of most famous, because he was there during the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement, if I remember correctly. So we're delighted that he has sent video message, and he is an addition to the program. We had hoped he would come, but with COVID and everything, he was unable to do that. So, and of course, Reverend McComish, very famous son of Ulster, he is unable to make it here today, unfortunately. So he has sent video message, however, and I had a sneak preview. I can tell you it is very thought-provoking and wonderful little testimony of his life and work. And I do hope we will have time to have a Q&A on some of that, because he will be joining us today, I believe, or people from Switzerland, where he's based, will be joining us, if I can get the Zoom technology right and everything. They are looking in at the minute, but I will try to get that more clear for them, because my camera here is a little bit funny. So I think when Reverend Hannah is ready for the introduction piece here, he might give us a signal. In the meantime, I will worry with my small talk. Is there anyone else on the program? I don't think we have anyone else scheduled. Oh yes, there might be some time as well for Stanley, who's joining us today from Calvin, Virginia. Where are you, Stanley? Right beside me. So if we have time, we will put you into the program as well. But we have some peace ambassadors that need to receive awards today. So the mayor's leaving now. Can we have another round of applause for Alderman Ward and his team? Thank you very much. Before we please roll. Okay. Just to let you know then, we have Abu Al-Jamali, who is a wonderful new leader in the Irish community. I've called him jokingly a hurling evangelist, so he doesn't take offence at that, but he loves the game of hurling, as I do myself. So he'll be telling us all about his love for the ash plant and for the sport that is hurling. I think Reverend Hannah might be ready to commence, if you want to take the podium. Thank you. A quick round of applause as we start off Peace Road, Derry, Peace Road Ireland 2021, Derry.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your introduction, Colin, and welcome everybody. It's great to see you. Many faces I recognize, and we've had a series of these wonderful meetings. I think this is the third that I've been to in different places, but it seems to grow in every way, every time. So thank you very much. I'm going to give a little background introduction here to the Peace Road project or initiative, if you like, and I'm going to start with a small video. So please carry on eating, and but do pay attention to what's on the screen here.
You might want to clear the lights there. Yeah.
I think there's going to be tea and coffee available as well. You can, help yourselves to that. So here's a little introduction to the Peace Road.
Then Can you pause in a second, Fraser?
In Palestine, all over the world, conflicts.
So we just need the help with the lighting there. Any staff can help there? Staff, can you get this lighting? Thank you. I'm not sure about the curtains. Do we need to close the ones near the...
That's...
Probably not
Let's just
necessary.
get these stage
Okay.
lights down, it should be fine. How's that? Fantastic. Oh. Back again. Wonderful. Here we go. Peace Road.
In Palestine, all over the world, conflicts and disputes between countries, races, religions, poverty, starvation, and disaster are going on. However, there are no conflicts or disputes that cannot be solved. The road to harmony and common prosperity by bridging the disconnected roads and breaking down barriers is now open. This road has started the race towards the global dream through endless means, overcoming conflicts and creating peace through communication and connection. The Peace Road Walk campaign is led by national and opinion leaders in each country. It establishes itself as a pillar of peace globally, with departure ceremonies held in crucial areas such as national parliaments and public buildings in various countries. When the Peace Road is set, leaders and citizens' heart and mind are all united. They step on the pedals and spread the message of peace. People from 130 countries, different languages, races, cultures, and religions, through the Peace Road, became one. Peace Road started with the construction of the International Peace Highway project initiated by Reverend Sun Myung-moon, president of the 10th Peace Road and the International Conference on the Unity of Sciences, ICOS, in 1981. The vision of the International Peace Highway project is to build a peaceful global community by linking each country with roads and uniting humankind as one family under God. The Peace Road movement inherited the noble will to create peace and hope. 9 years since the start in 2013, now the world is running and breathing together. Year after year, the Peace March that attracts thousands of citizens worldwide is growing day by day, warming people's hearts around the world. And it has been refined into a global festival of peace, spreading the new seeds of hope. During the Korean War 71 years ago, young people from 16 countries fought for the freedom of peace. In honor of their spirit, the 2021 Peace Road traversing the Korean Peninsula began. The traversing group went through major metropolitan cities to Incheon. I'm running and dreaming that the road I am on will lead me to Pyongyang. Let's go to a signification with hope. No heel, no high heel are difficult for us. Loaded with the sweat from all leaders and citizens, the Peace Road 2021 campaigns for unification of the Korean Peninsula. The only meaning with hope is creating world peace and unification of the Korean Peninsula. The harder we pedal, the closer we get to our goal. Peace Road will never stop until the day the grand dream of a heavenly unified Korea becomes a reality. The grand dream for all humankind, the dream of becoming one peaceful family of humanity. Until that day comes true, more people worldwide will become the champions of Peace Road and join the campaign of hope. Peace Road will not stop until we witness a heavenly unified Korea and heavenly unified world.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you all again for attending. It's been very significant to have so many of you coming here. And especially those who participated in the Peace and Prayer Walk earlier today. That's, it's simple and it's a symbolic act, but it constitutes part of this ongoing vast worldwide project or set of projects or initiatives that are really a multiplicity of events taking place around the world that collectively we call Peace Road. And the video that you've just seen, it kind of charts a bit of that history, and I thought seeing the images would do more than anything I could explain. So the Peace Road initiative, it's calling really for the construction of an international highway. And this is to link countries for travel and trade, because as you know, historically, many practical steps towards peaceful cooperation between nations, they've been fueled by the desire to develop markets and to develop trade with neighbors. It's a simple act, but it's a very human one. And it's something that countries like the Netherlands, for example, were particularly good at, and it stood them in good stead. So the point is really that the spiritual and very real benefits that include genuine and lasting peaceful coexistence are sometimes arrived at better indirectly by doing something else, like establishing a road for communications. Ooh, right, we're losing our picture. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Not sure what that means. Okay.
Not sure. Okay, we're back again.
We're back. Okay, so the very fact really of cooperating on a project of such massive scale as this international transport route, which is envisaged, here it was laid out rather roughly, of course, but the idea is that either side of this transport route there is a zone which is, you don't need your passport or your visa, is a kind of free trade zone, very ambitious, futuristic plan to allow much greater freedom of movement and exchange, cultural exchange, trade, etc. So the human race, as we know, to make progress really in living together, in living by these three principles that UPF espouses and uses as its themes in many of its conferences, that is interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. This is a way to kind of prepare the ground for this transition and this development. So if peaceful coexistence is an outcome, getting there through this kind of means requires really a higher degree of productive cooperation between neighboring nations than really we've ever seen before. But what a wonderful thing to do, right? So there will be a move through this toward a leveling up of technology and economic standards across the world. But because of the mega project nature of these proposals, there has to be grassroots and widespread support from the people in the countries that it passes through, and leaders of those nations involved have to be totally behind it. So much of the challenge to this, from kind of suspicion or surviving historical resentments and mistrust between nations, which will inevitably feature in striving to build such an infrastructure project. This can and is already being kind of challenged and met and transformed through the Peace Road projects. If you like, these are here to win the spiritual battle before the substantial kind of physical construction really begins in earnest, although some parts of the world there are projects which are already underway and in advanced kind of planning, such as the tunnel between Korea and Japan. So it's dealing with the kind of winning the hearts and minds really of people and dispelling those challenges. Peace Road then is described as a good global goodwill project of the Universal Peace Federation. Many individual projects bringing awareness and encouraging cooperation and taking different forms, but often seeking healing where there was strife in the past between nations and communities, and directly related to this concept of the international highway and bridge tunnel projects. So all aiming towards a future peaceful world. I can illustrate this by referring to our in July we had a UK Peace Road project, and that started off in Carlisle here with the Mayor of Carlisle attending, very excited group of people, undergoing a longer walk than we did today. This was along Hadrian's Wall, which is about 80 miles, and that's harder than it sounds, right? But there's my good wife there leading the way along this particular, one of the few surviving sections. And they got in the end to Newcastle, and we were with the Lord Mayor of Newcastle, who was very enthusiastic about this project and came on the last stretch with us to walk to the many bridges that cross the Tyne there. So, but what about the symbolic meaning? Well, as we were walking, we were thinking, well, this was an extraordinary division, such a lot of effort to divide the lands that we now call Scotland and England. And it was in its day a huge project. Apparently it was a tourist attraction at the time, in the early centuries. People come and see this and see it with their own eyes, really. But we found, well, there's another country today, which we are very focused on in UPF to end the division, and that is the DMZ, or demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea. And interestingly, they look very similar when you see them on a map, and they're roughly the same kind of length, these two. Of course, Hadrian's Wall about 1900 years earlier. So this is, what we've been doing, and thank you for contributing to this process. We felt it would be fitting to have an extremely intellectual conference attached to this, right? So we're looking forward to that and examine some of these issues that are related to peacemaking and the Peace Road project. So thank you very much, everybody. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Dr. Hannah. That was really inspirational and very good summary of Peace Road worldwide, and also near us here in the UK, or here if you like, from your perspective. I was over there in Newcastle, and I can testify it was a really wonderful atmosphere, walking through the streets with the banner. And yeah, can we have the lights again just for a second? Do you have, Glenn, Doherty is up next, and do you have a presentation, or is it just from the heart? Great. So I want to introduce our next speaker. He is a man that I wish I had known years ago, but I only got to meet him recently when he did his day-to-day bread and butter job of guiding people through the city of Derry and telling them about the historic city and the conflicts and what sort of atmosphere he has to reside in every day for many years. He's about the same age as myself. I'm not telling you what age that is, but I am so delighted that he accepted an invitation today to educate us about Derry, and he is probably, in my opinion, the most qualified to talk about the theme today, the topic which we have, which is resolving conflict in Ireland. Lessons for the world, question mark. Do we have lessons? Are we in a better place? So I would like, I know I won't be able to give this man a proper introduction, so I'm not going to stay here all day trying to wing it, as I say. I would like him to join us. He has a degree in history from Ulster University, Magee. Is that right? Yeah. And he is what you call a veteran in this city. He has strong, deep family connections going back to the time of Bloody Sunday, which he might want to share with us or not, it's up to himself, but I am delighted that he will share something with us today. And please take down a question, because I want us to benefit from his knowledge and education today, and I think if we have a good question for him later on, he'll be able to address that, because he's the hardest working man I've met in Derry. He's gone off doing a tour at 3:30, and I've told him we better be back here at 5 o'clock or 4:45 for a presentation for a peace ambassador, and we're very proud to have him. Please give a big round of applause to Glenn Doherty.
What's my speech done? Great to see you all here, folks. My name is Glenn Doherty. I'm a native of the city of Derry. And my job that I do is to try my best to explain the history of Derry and Ireland in general. Some people think I'm good at it, But I was born in, I'm going to give you his age away, in 1971, in a wee place called the Brandywell, which is a lesser known spot on the bog side, but they're right beside each other, essentially. I did study Irish history and politics at McGee. I went back to education at the age of 39. That's when I realised as an adult it was probably a good idea. Better late than never. But the history of Derry is vast. It's immense. The modern history of Derry is fascinating. And when you try and explain to people what exactly happened here, some people have a fair idea of what happened. Some people have heard of different times, different periods. And one of the periods that I do make the best to explain was Bloody Sunday. That's when my father was murdered. It's still fairly emotional, even sort of 50 years later, to talk about it. In this sort of formal sense, I don't really find it too bad when I'm taking people around and showing and trying to explain here, but when it's a sort of personal sense, it's slightly harder to describe it. And from then on, we were known as the family who had their father murdered on Bloody Sunday, one of 13. My father was actually the 12th person, the second last one, by state forces. And then afterwards, then your family was essentially earmarked because of that. But when it comes to my father was always a great believer in education. We hadn't got that then. Most of us went back to university at a later stage, not at the age of 18. Some were 25, some were 30, some were 40. But we got there and we done it. But when it comes to the likes of basically the Good Friday Agreement, 1998, it's not very many pages long. I think it's about 30. Some people have never read it. Some people should have read it, have never read it. But when it came to that time, quite a lot of people thought that this deal wasn't possible. I can't remember who said it, everything's impossible until it's done. And that's essentially where they were trying to sell the Good Friday Agreement. Now, as part of that deal, before the deal, the issue of Bloody Sunday essentially had to be dealt with. And at the time, the likes of John Hume, Martin McGuinness, Tony Blair, they were setting the framework of the document. And Bloody Sunday was essentially the main stumbling block on the sort of nationalist side. That sort of wound that hadn't healed. So to sell something like the Good Friday Agreement, you had to give people positives of how it could possibly work. Bloody Sunday was the big issue at the time. So it's no real coincidence that the Savile inquiry, that was the last inquiry into Bloody Sunday, began in 1998, because it was part of that. It's not part of the deal, but it's part of the deal to get the deal done. Because the politicians here, they had to go back to the people of Derry and basically tell them that the first investigation, which was a whitewash, is now going to be replaced by something else. And that was one of the big positives that came out almost immediately. Even before the Good Friday Agreement was known as the Good Friday Agreement type of thing. And that was the issue. So essentially what happened on Bloody Sunday was petrol in the flames for the conflict itself. But then in 1998 it was essentially almost allowed the conflict to end by dealing with the subject itself legally. So when it came to the Good Friday Agreement, that was the sell. When people were talking about what could happen after the Good Friday Agreement, the likes of Martin McGuinness and Ian Gaisley sitting in the same room, people laughed. And they did. People laughed and said that was not possible, it's not going to happen. I don't know if everybody knows who they are, but they were known as the Chuckle Brothers, because every time you see them, they were laughing. So the deal is done, and the Good Friday Agreement is still here, thankfully. Some people would say it hasn't worked. Most people would say it has quite a lot of positives, which it obviously does. It's quite easy to stand on the sidelines and pick holes. what they actually were. It's quite easy to keep them, but once a war started, it's very easy. That's the easy part. The very hard and difficult and almost never ending part is getting a peace process and something like the Good Friday Agreement and to keep it going. Not everybody got what they wanted. Nobody got what they wanted. But at the same time, people have now the opportunities that they didn't have in 1998. You mentioned roadways, building roadways. You can't get to Derry by motorway. There isn't one. And this links right back to the formation of the state as a unionist Protestant state, where Derry was predominantly Catholic, or is. So there was no infrastructure ever put in here. And that is something that's still being dealt with. We've got a half a dual carriageway coming down to the city in 2021. But that's what people will be looking at. And in Derry in particular, quite a lot of people would say that we haven't seen the benefits of the Good Friday Agreement. That is true. If you're talking in economic, financial terms, but if you're talking about the fact that you can now walk the street without worrying, is this policeman going to stop me, or is something going to happen, or is there going to be a shooting? You don't have to worry about so much with your children. I really don't know how parents did the job that they did. At the time when you're letting your child go out into a city where there is a war taking place. I don't know how they done it, to be honest. I couldn't imagine myself. I would never. My daughter was born in 1997, my oldest one. We had the ceasefire, so she's never known British soldiers. And then you had the reform of the police, the new police service here, which was a massive positive. The older RUC were 95% Protestant and never acceptable to the nationalist community, and never would have been. And then they were replaced by the PSNI, who are 38% Catholic. That's a huge positive there as well. To actually speak Irish, I mean, one of the last times that I remember a child speaking Irish in the 1990s, he was essentially almost arrested for doing it. He was asked by a police officer his name, and he answered Australia, and he was taken off the street. I think he was 13. Somebody mentioned the Flak Yule. I heard you mention earlier. It came to Derry in 2013, where the police set up a special unit, a special office in the Guildhall Square for anybody who wanted to speak Australia. So they had a special unit to do that, which would have been unheard of in the old system and the old way. So the Good Friday Agreement, it's not perfect. I do tell people that. But what we had 25 years ago to what we had now is a lot better. It's not perfect today, but it is a lot better that we would have had or did have in the past. So the support for that agreement, which I and my family and the vast majority of people in Ireland supported and still do. There will be days that you don't think that this is actually worth doing, but in the same sense, do you want to go back to 25 years ago where what we had then? So the history of Derry, the history of Ireland, you can go and you can see the links between 1600 and 1921. There's a direct link from one to the other. The 1600s is the plantation of Ulster. I don't know if anybody's up on their Irish history, but essentially the province of Ulster was the last part of Ireland to go under English rule. It does as well contain 9 counties, not 6. But that is where the Protestant population got their roots from, because the native Irish population were swept aside and replanted or repopulated with English and Scottish Protestants. Those both sets of Protestants who came over here actually segregated themselves. I heard a rumour there that the Scots and English don't get on too well. So the city of Derry, you're talking about walls. The walled city of Derry was constructed in 1613 to keep the native Irish population out, but the Scottish weren't allowed inside. The only time the Scots were allowed inside when there was essentially rebellion. So somebody had to be on the front line here. So it was generally the Scottish. So anytime there was rebellion, they were allowed, but essentially initially they segregated themselves. So all the wee towns and villages that sprung up in the plantation period would have been either English or Scottish, not both. So what the Derry walls, that's what they were built for, to keep the native Irish population out. But now it's a tourist attraction. where it's the only fully walled city in Ireland, and you can walk around. You couldn't touch half of it, or 1/3 of it, right up to 2003. Yeah, you're okay, it's fine.
Is that better?
It's is that better there now, yeah? Because there was a British Army base on there, right up to 2003, on the city walls themselves. Anybody done the Peace Bridge from 2011, takes you to Everton Square, which was Everton British Army base, to 2003. That was the headquarters for Bloody Sunday radio operations. So the changes and the positives are there. There are negatives, where we haven't really seen much of we're still waiting on our university extension from 1954. Still waiting on it. But there, of course, there is and always will be positives to the peace process. That's essentially, if you've got any questions, you're more than welcome.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. So we might just take one or two if anyone has some, because Glenn does need to go and do a tour, but we will be back later. So Stanley, would you like to stand up and I'll give you the mic. Go up there to the floor and...
So thanks, Colin. I have a question in my mind. What's the realistic chance of real peace between the North and South? Now I'm talking about, in regard to the spectrum of my work with peaceful and cross-border projects.
You want to know what the prospect is between like United Ireland and that type of issue?
Because I can tell you, I've been just concluded a peace project between the North and South, and one of the aspects of the project was kind of unite, people between good faith, ethnicity and race and all that. But in between the project, we kind of ran into problems. People are still not, let me put it this way, are still not kind of cordial to make friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's still a separation of who, then, and we, that kind of stuff.
I mean, when people think of United Ireland, it's generally in a simplistic term, rather than going into the sort of nitty-gritties of race, religion, everything else. I haven't got that answer how to solve these problems. But one of the things that is now sort of, what people say would be inevitable, is United Ireland. Mostly because of Brexit, where what United Ireland represented 10 years ago is a completely different to what people are doing now, where we're mostly economic and free movement to stay in Europe. So when people's looking at United Ireland, it's a sort of different eye, or a different set of eyes that you can see. So it wouldn't be necessarily now a Republican nationalist or unionist Protestant agenda, where it's sort of blended, where people are looking at it in their own perspective, where United Ireland allows myself to remain a European citizen and to obviously be educated in any part of Europe that I choose and work as well. Unfortunately, racism, sectarianism, whatever way ism you want to put it, you have to keep working on it, because generally when you're growing up in a vastly white society, then you see the different colours coming in. For one reason, a lot of people are fearful. I brought my children up to respect, and that's the main word that I brought my children up to respect. Doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter where you come from. If you're shown respect, you give it back. That's me. Unfortunately, there will be people who won't be friends or won't look or won't speak, but that's an issue then that people have to keep working at. It's going to be a long road, unfortunately, but for people to be accepted, or for people to accept a different society, a multicultural society, which is healthy. As well, I was watching my daughter train this morning in Gaelic football, all the different backgrounds. You can see people from different backgrounds there, which is fantastic to see. Sport, it is a great way of integration for quite a lot of people. Language as well. My children, 3 of them are fluent Irish speakers. So I'm not unfortunate, but I made sure that they were. The school that they were in was funded by the parents. The Catholic Church came down and told us that they would give us basically a new school and pay for everything if we basically put a saint's name on it. It was tempting, but at the same time, if that became St. Paul's, right, then quite a lot of people would have looked at that as a Catholic school, not as an Irish school, and that was rejected by everybody in the room. So it's a way of integration for more ways than one. But hopefully, with the United Ireland, then that's a problem that we can fix. Hopefully.
Thank you. Can we get a big round of applause for Derry? It's just as well you're walking off the stage because I have about 20 questions for you, so you're getting away lightly. Thank you so much. Thank you. You plan to be back later on, won't you, for asking for quiz presentations? And if you have any questions, let me know. We'll put it to it again separately and then we'll come back to us on it. Unless anyone has a burning question, quick one. Anyone? Urgent question? No. Oh, I have one. Hello.
Yeah, so I was very curious when you mentioned the peace process, and you mentioned the kind of lingering resentment for Bloody Sunday being a major blocker. And I see many parallels in other problems, other conflicts, where there's something that people are holding on to, something resentful that they can't forget, or it's not easy to forgive. And so to me, I felt that was a key element of the agreement, that, like you were saying, it was the agreement to have an agreement almost, right? And I just was, just because it's something that's a little, probably less well known than the peace agreement itself, right? Because people see a peace agreement, they don't always see all the hard work going in the background. But if we're talking about other peace processes where we need to try to replicate the success, I'm thinking even of a place like Israel and Palestine, right? Or you talk about, well, I think North and South Korea is even a different type of complexity. If there's just one or 2 points about that agreement around Bloody Sunday that you think was crucial, key, that allowed the process to move forward? Because I know you mentioned it, but I kind of wanted to hear more details, if that's okay. But I know you don't have so much time, so that was the question on my mind.
A little moment or
Key elements in the success
You mean sort of in terms of Bloody Sunday, and in terms of dealing with that issue first?
Yeah, we said it was reported.
Yeah. Sorry, okay. So, in the events of Bloody Sunday, there was 2 supposed investigations. The first one in 1972 was the Wizarding Tribunal. Before it was published, it was known as the whitewash, the cover-up. It was... Okay, yeah. So, essentially what happened here is when the state was created in 1921, partition of Ireland, the Catholic population in the north were denied the right to vote, proper housing and proper employment. And the civil rights movement was set up essentially in 1967. Quite a lot of attention was paid to the United States and how they dealt with the civil rights there. We basically used the same platform here, which was peaceful protest and non-sectarian, non-religious. Nobody was barred from coming into the civil rights movement, but that's essentially what they were looking for, was voting rights, housing rights and employment rights for the Catholic population. Bloody Sunday, as it became known, it was on the 30th of January 1972. That was a civil rights demonstration. It was organised by a guy known as Ivan Cooper. Ivan was one of quite a few Protestant leaders within the civil rights movement. The demonstration had finished in an area in the Bogside known as Free Derry Corner, Free Derry Wall, when the elite regiment of the British Army, the 1st Battalion of the Parachute Regiment, were ordered into the Bogside. they opened fire immediately with live ammunition for the next 15 minutes. Now, when that 15 minutes was done, on the streets of the Bog side, there was 13 dead and 15 wounded. Now, you have to keep in mind that the Civil Rights Movement was a totally non-violent organisation, and they were shown the ferociousness of the British state. The soldier who murdered my father was given a medal of bravery and promoted after Bloody Sunday. So that was the sort of main recruitment drive. It was a collapse of the Civil Rights Movement, a huge recruitment drive into the IRA. Apparently the IRA in Derry on the day of Bloody Sunday were 12 people. 1 month after Bloody Sunday in Derry, there were 300. So it went from civil rights, peaceful civil rights demonstrations to urban war, urban conflict. That was the major turning point in modern Irish history. The 13 dead, 7 of them were children, 6 of them were 17. Almost all, including my father, was shot in the back as they tried to get away from the army. So the government then launched an inquiry that became known as the Wizarding Tribunal days after Bloody Sunday. Wizard is the Chief Justice of England. Non-coincidentally, also an ex-British Army officer. He spent 6 weeks of an investigation and produced, I think it was a 38-page document without ever setting foot in Derry. There was a place called Cold Rain, was a unionist town about an hour's drive from here. In that document, he basically asked the parachute regiment what happened and agreed with them. All the people in Bloody Sunday there were branded as more than likely gunmen and bombers and responsible for their own deaths. The second investigation, after years of campaigning by the families, it was known as the Bloody Sunday Justice Campaign. Eventually, then, in connection with the Good Friday Agreement, the Savile inquiry was launched by Tony Blair and began in 1998. That lasted all in all for 12 years. They produced 150 million word report. The first document was 37 pages. In that report, essentially, when the parachute regiment opened fire on Bloody Sunday, they did so knowing that they were shooting unarmed civilians. There was no mistakes made. There was no thinking that this microphone was a weapon. When they opened fire, they were firing on civilians. So that is essentially one of the big turning points, again, in Irish history, where after Bloody Sunday it was a recruitment drive into the IRA, but at the same time then, 40 years later, it enabled for the peace process to kick on. I don't know if that answers your question, or not. Yeah.
And I do appreciate this deeply personal for you as well, so thank you so much, Glenn, and please stay as long as you can, and we welcome you back later. And a big round of applause again for Glenn Doherty. Our next, I'm sorry, I have to cut the questions there. We could listen. We could give I think he could give a peaceful forum all day by himself there on this topic. So thank you so much for that masterclass, Glenn. Another round of applause, please. Thank you for the questions as well. Very nice questions. So moving on now, we have our next contributor, our next speaker. His name is Aboud Al-Jamali. I don't know is he still going by his AKA of Bonnero Minchik, because I think it's pretty cool myself. He's representing the new Irish here. For me, he's a real patriot. He has a love of hurling, which is my favourite sport. Because I'm from Mayo and living in Cavan, I can't play hurling as much as I would like to. But Aboud is lucky, he's living in Dublin and he has contacts all over the GAA, so he's able to, he's a key member of the team in, what is it? Ballantyre Gales. St John's, Ballantyre St John's down in South County Dublin, in leafy Dublin. And he is, for me, a real patriot of Ireland, and he's a son of Iraq as well. But for me, he's a true Gael, and he represents the new Irish in a privilege to have a love of the games. I know Naomi's and Miriam's lads as well play Gaelic football. I'm more of a hurler and a soccer man, but I'll tell you what, I'll watch a game of football if Mayo aren't playing. Anyway, I want to introduce him. He's a young man who I think has a great future in politics and in society in Ireland. He is a graduate of law now from DIT, I believe. He's working as an intern in the Oireachtas, the Houses of Parliament, and he's currently just started with the Can Corda, the Speaker of the House, and that office there. So he has enormous amounts he wants to share with us, but I told him you better limit this now to 10 minutes or there'll be trouble. I'll be chasing him with a hurry or I won't give him a lift home if he's not careful. So please, he's a wonderful young man and a great ambassador for the new Irish, and I consider him just Irish as a patriot. So put your hands together for Bonner Lynch, Marshall O'Halloran. Thank you very much.
Once upon a time, there was a child amongst many thousands of children. This child witnessed shootings, bombings, funerals passing their house almost every day. Something no child should ever have to see, ever. They were confused, but this was their normality. They didn't know any different. This child just wanted basic human rights: family, education, liberty, security, peace. No child wants to see their family members killed in conflict. No child wants to attend funerals, especially of family members who were close to that child. No child wants to wake up knowing that their education, ambitions and dreams are on hold or being taken away through no fault of their own. For some children, this is permanent, their reality, something that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. No child wants to be in a situation where they can't play with their friends anymore, to lose them forever, having had to flee their home country, or even knowing those friends have been killed. There's nothing worse than depriving a child of their liberty, mentally and physically. Liberty is where they can truly grow. As a parent, it is important to teach and educate our children the meaning of liberty, what they are allowed to do and not do, pursuing the best interests of humanity and morality. No child wants to be living in total horror and mentally damaged life. Why should a child have to ponder and ask these questions? Am I going to get shot today? Are my parents going to be back from home safe today? Will I see my granddad, grandmother, uncle or auntie ever again? No child wants to wake up in a peaceless state of mind. A mind with no peace is a mind with no bright future. Ladies and gentlemen, I was that child, one of those children. However, I stand here before you all to try and make a difference which will ensure our children and youth can grow and flourish in peace. A lot of people think ending conflict in Ireland is not possible. I totally understand the pain and suffering that both sides, the north and south, have endured. I myself can relate to conflict. When America invaded Iraq, tens of thousands of Iraqi people were displaced, killed, lost. Some have not even been found today. The Civil War took place straight after the invasion. There was a time where there were actually two words on consecutively, the invasion and Civil War. People were killing people over identity. In the 21st century, anyone that kills or attempts to kill someone over their identity or who they are hurting. Whilst this cannot be condoned, they must be brought to discussion and listened to so they too can see the importance of true dialogue and understanding. Sectarianism is a political failure by grown-up adults who cannot come up with an agreement between themselves that is in the interest of all the people. The past is the past. I am not saying completely forget the past. It's important to know and be aware of our history. Acknowledge it. Accept what has happened. And let's all try to move on for a brighter future together. In the interest of international relations and public policy, it is vitally important to not shape our future based on our past, which entailed conflict. Conflict is never the answer. Negotiation of peace is. Tolerance, acceptance, diversity, the inclusion of people for who they are certainly affirms the essence of peace. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I appeal to the youth from all different backgrounds, ethnicities and minorities to take initiative and be the change makers that the world wants to see. Inspire the generations that are yet to come. I firmly believe that together we can bring about change. Change that is in the interest of our children, our youth, our elderly, our people, our society, our wonderful country, Ireland. Gurglia Mahav.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to ask, just in the interest of time, to try and get as many people as possible, I will ask you to hold off on questions for about until after our dear Peace Ambassador Yemi Adeluga from Navan comes up. I think she is next on the agenda as it were, and if you are ready to come to the podium, we'd love to have you, Councillor Adeluga. So Yemi is, please give your hands. Put your hands together for Yemi. She is first councillor in Ireland of African heritage, female councillor of African heritage, and we're delighted that she is such a strong supporter of UPF. And I could say her introduction again is another one that go on for about pages and pages. But I know her from, I heard her on News Talk Radio a couple of years ago. She was talking about God, and I had to turn around and say, "What? Somebody on News Talk talking about God on Irish radio? I thought we were post-God, I thought we were post-religion." And here was this beautiful young Christian, a politician, kind of a politician, but they're lucky to have her talking about God. So I had to pinch myself on my way to work in Athlone. So I was so delighted that she accepted an invitation to come here today. And she would find the time to bring her lovely family with her. And again, she's another patriot as far as I'm concerned. Her family are deeply immersed in the community in Navan, and it was so much so that she got elected there, which is something I think very phenomenal achievement. So I hope in the future that we're more than Abood. These are the people that we want to elect at all air into the Parliament, and she is really a go-getter. She's got, as I said, a very long CV, so I don't want to spend all day outlining everything, because we're going to miss, deprive her of more and more time to speak to us today, or to talk to us, or to share with us her heart. So is that okay? Would you forgive me for the lack of proper introduction, and I'll give you the mic and let you do your thing.
Thank you very much, Bob. Hi, everyone. Oh, surely we had lunch. We can do better. Hi, everyone. Can I ask us to please stand up for a moment, please? Indulge me. Please stand up. Please stand up. Please stand up. After lunch, sometimes we tend to be a bit relaxed and a bit tired. So I'm going to ask you to do something, right? Respecting social distance. Turn to the person next to you. Turn to the person next to you. The instruction is simple. Turn to the person next to you. That's simple. Very good. Just face them. Like face them, face them, face them. Oh my God. The last time we were in class, this is a room full of people who are slightly older than mine. I was 50 3 days ago. I was 50 years old 3 days ago. Right? You don't believe me? to you, face them, like that, right? And I want you, so somebody goes first. I want you to use 3 words, just 3 words, not a sentence, just 3 words to describe yourself. 3 words, let's go. You start, one person starts first, and then we'll switch. 3 words to describe yourself. Let's go. One person goes first. 3 words to describe yourself. One person goes. You know, people are still trying to explain the exercise. And time. So now let's switch. Next person. Switch. Next person. Describe yourself with 3 words. Not a sentence, 3 words. And you get 3 of you working together. The 3rd person, switch. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Alright, so, thank you. Can I have everybody's attention back now? Thank you very much. Who had, don't sit down yet. Come on. Thank you. Sorry. Who had to think? Be honest now. Who had to think before they could pick 3 words? God bless you. Yes? Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. Very good. Thank you. Can you tell me, the lady at the back, if you can speak it very loud, who raised her hand? Why did it take so long? Yes, the lady in the white jacket. Yes, your beautiful self. Why did it take so long to process it? Oh, sorry, herself, I think. Yes? You had to think, yes? Why did it take so long? What was the problem? To narrow down your identity. Your identity is so big, it's so wide, is it? Okay. Danny, why did you have to think so much? To pick 3 words.
Maybe I don't love myself enough.
Maybe you don't love yourself enough. Please, can you rub her back there now? Show her some love. Show some love. Show some love. Show some love. Why did you have to think so much? Yeah. Did you raise your hand? Who else had to think? I want one more person. Who had to? Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's kind of like to understand more myself in this people.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And when you finally were able to pick 3 words, how did you feel about those 3 words? Do you think they really define you? Who can tell me? Do you think those 3 words really define you? Stanley, did your 3 words really define you? So, hang on now, you assume that everybody knows. For example, I don't know.
I'm not assuming. The people that I'm talking to...
Yeah, there you go. That's the word. That's, yeah.
So, before I started, they already know what I'm going to say.
Okay.
So, not that they know all.
Yes.
For
But you're confident that those 3 define you. Very good. Marisa, did your 3... I love your reaction. Did your 3 words, are you confident that those 3 words define you? Thank you all so much for being here. Please put your hands together for yourselves. Thank you for indulging me. Please be seated. Please be seated. Thank you so much. As Columba told you, my name is Yemi Adenuga. I'm a councillor in Navan Municipal District, Meath County Council. I became a councillor in Ireland, a politician, as they call that role. In Ireland, I say, yes, I'm in politics, but I'm not a politician, and I'm not in politics to play politics. I'm in politics to solve the problems that are brought in front of me. And so when I stepped into politics in 2019, little did I know that there was a place for me to be the change. Amor said a word, he made a sentence earlier when he was speaking about being the change we want to see. To be even a bigger changer of what I want to see. But here is the thing. I cannot give what I don't have. I'm sure we've heard that phrase a million times. There was no way I could possibly be a bigger change agent if I don't have it already. And so today we're talking about peace. We're talking about bringing about peace in the world, peace in our environment, peace within our homes. And the question to us, our gathering may seem small, but we are indeed an army. Every gathering is an army. Every gathering is to a purpose. And every gathering is to a role. And every time I'm asked to speak somewhere, I ask myself the question, why are we doing this? Why are we sitting here today? Are we here to come and listen to all the beautiful speeches and it's nice and we clap and we're gone? Or is there more? And I tell you there is more. Because you have a role to play. A bigger role beyond sitting in this room today. A bigger role beyond us going for a walk and praying and doing the videos. A bigger role beyond meeting people in our different clusters or cohorts and talking about the need for peace. A role that says you have to step up, get out, and be the difference. Now, when I asked you all earlier on to describe yourselves with 3 words, some people found it a bit difficult to define themselves. And so if you have a bigger role to play and you're not sure who you really are, how do you see the bigger picture that you're supposed to fit into? So we're talking about world peace. What about my backyard peace? What about my neighbor's peace? What about my family peace? What about peace with my children? What about peace with the friends who I know really don't like me but are pretending to be friends? But yes, I have to try and be friendly with them because I need them in my circle. Am I making sense to us all? So while we're looking at a bigger picture, I want to challenge us in this room today that we can be the ripple effect. As much as we're expecting that there will be policies changed at the higher levels, we can actually be the ones who start the movement we're talking about to begin to effect that small but meaningful and effective change. And how can we do that? First of all, I want you to ask yourself, am I at peace with myself? Am I at peace with myself? Sometimes we ask people to come and be nice, smile to people, be nice to them. But if you're not nice or kind to yourself, or you don't believe in your own kindness, you cannot give what you don't have. And so I want us for a second, can you please close your eyes? Please? I want to do something slightly different. I just want us to leave this place with a purpose. It's a beautiful gathering, and every time there's a UPF gathering, it's absolutely phenomenal. And today, we're going to leave with a stronger purpose. Not just being members of this amazing organization or being ambassadors, but leaving with a fresh determination to do something slightly different than the usual. So as you close your eyes, I want you to process for a second. Am I at peace with myself? Be honest, you're not telling me, you're telling yourself. And the second thing I want you to think about, who is that person that bothers my spirit every time I think about them? That I feel I'm not totally at peace with? Who am I still upset with? That person that sometimes brings the worst out of me and does not allow me. We're people of faith in this room. And sometimes people challenge our faith and question the inner peace that we think we have. Who's that one person or those 2 people that sometimes make us be the persons we don't want to be? Can you leave this room today and decide to be at peace with them? So please keep your eyes closed. I'm going to ask a question. Everyone, please keep your eyes closed. I'm going to ask a question. Is there anyone in the room who feels that there's somebody they need to make peace with? If there is, please raise your hand. You're under no obligation to, but if you want to, everyone still please keep your eyes closed. Please raise your hand if you feel there is someone you need to make peace with. God bless you. Thank you. You may put your hands down. You may open your eyes now. When we talk about peace, it starts from here and here. There can be no world peace until we as individuals begin to sort out our backyard. I'm a small girl from a small village in a small town, in a country, actually a big country. I'm originally from Nigeria, and there are over 200 million people in that country. But I came from a background where I was given no chance. My father had 7 wives and 27 children. Yes, he was very busy. And I am number 16 in the family. I was given no chance. My mother was the last wife, and she had 6 girls. And my father's family spoke into my mother's girls' lives and told us that we were going to end up on the streets of Lagos as prostitutes. And that we were going to sell ourselves for nothing. Imagine if I carried that unforgiveness on for years. I would never be standing here today. But for peace, I had to take that pain and turn it around and show them that no one had the key. No one had the key to my life unless I gave them the key. No one has the key to your peace unless you give them the key. And so today I want to challenge everyone when we leave here. Make a fresh determination to be that change. How? Number 1, if there be anybody in your life, I'm not saying go and be best friends with anyone. I'm just saying, go show them the true love of the God you believe in. We're people of faith. Regardless of whether they love you or not, you show them. Let your values, how many of us in this room have values? If you do, please raise your hands. God bless you all. I just love this room. Let your values guide you. I have several values, but I have 5 core values that guide my life. 1, I call them my creed L, and that's my family value too. 1 is consistency. I do everything the same way over and over and over again. How are experts made? How are gurus made? Because they do the same thing they're good at over and over again till they know it like the back of their hands. That's how experts are made. Consistency. R is for respect. Respect for myself, for others. Whether they give me respect or not, my value tells me to give it. And if they don't give it back, it's on them, not on me. It's not my problem. I have followed my value. I is for integrity. Anything that would tarnish my name, I don't touch it. D is for do unto others as you'll have them do unto you. Whatever I want people to do to me, I do to them. If they do the same, happy days. If they don't, that's their problem, not mine. And L is love. Love for myself, love for God, love for family and real friends. And why am I sharing this? Regardless of what people do to me, I follow my values and do unto others what I'll have them do unto me. So if we want to see more peace, it starts from an individual. It starts from you, it starts from me. I want you to go back today and find that person. Shock them. They'll not be expecting it. Shock them. Start the peace from within. Whether it's a friend, whether it's a sister, whether it's a neighbor that wouldn't talk to you because you are too educated for them. Well, perhaps you're a little too educated and they're threatened by you. But be the change you want to see. And when all that is said and done, do it again. Do what? I can hear you. And last but not the least, as I wrap up, I want us to invite the culture of a mouth that is constantly nice and teach this to our children. Can I ask you to please rise again? Thank you very much. So I ask you to raise your right hand. You're not swearing a sorority, I promise you. And say I. Insert your name. I promise myself that from today I will continue to let my mouth be nice. So help me God. God bless you all. Thank you for listening.
Wow, how about that, everybody? Big round of applause again for Amy and Linda. And one and only. Thanks for waking us all up. Really appreciate it. I was so happy to see that lovely interactive session. And yeah, so much to be said about you because and you've helped us a lot in the last during lockdown, keeping us in good spirits. We had a thing called the Cyber Faith Roundtable. You joined us on that, and thank you to all our peace ambassadors who did that. It's not easy interacting on Zoom, as we've all found out during lockdown, trying to stay focused and inspired. And this is the kind of thing we've been missing, everybody. And it's great to have this back again in real rooms with real people. You can't do that really the same way on Zoom, that's for sure. But you can see how lively Amy is, and it would be great. I really hope we can support her. Everything, all the work that she's doing as one of our really precious peace ambassadors. But I think we're doing well time-wise. We're looking at getting tea and coffee now in a few minutes. So before we just break the flow and get into a little bit more tea, coffee, and some music for 10 or 15 minutes, we might just see is there any questions for Amy or for anybody else for that matter. If we, because there are a couple of people I want to get into the program if possible. Eli, Pastor Lowe, you have a question for Amy? Oh, you want to stand up?
I'm always very interested in politics, and I'm always very happy to speak to people in politics. So I just had a very general question. You know, you work in a very local type of politics as a councillor in Navan, which is just up the road from where I live. And I'm wondering just your view on, you know, I always feel local politics is so important, so valuable. But where do you feel that it starts to hit a point where you feel like you have to then go to the higher level, like you're blocked by, I don't know, the county politics, or you're blocked by the national politics? Like, how much can we do locally? Can we do everything locally? Or do we need to also then start to have more national influence? I'm just genuinely curious. Like, I don't have a view on it myself.
Thank you, Pastor Eli. Well, I believe, I strongly have come to believe that every politics is local. Whether you're president or prime minister, whatever you are, every politics is local because the people who vote for you are very local. Right? You have to go to your constituents to try and convince them to vote for you at some stage. And so, for local politics, like the councillors, they are the ears, they've got the ears to the ground, and so they understand the people, right? So when you're at the stage where you're a senator or you're TD, as we have in Ireland, you're at a higher level where you don't necessarily have that time to always engage with the people. But if you're a smart TD or a smart senator, you engage with the councillor, because your councillor will feed you what the people are saying on the ground. And if you feel too disconnected then from your councillor, you're struggling with policies, you're trying to change policies, but then you don't know if the people really, if that's what they want. I believe that politics is about the people. There is no politics without people, and there are no politicians without people. So for anything that has to be changed, you must engage with the people. Now, sometimes people don't know what they want. Right? Sometimes the people don't know what they want, but they know what they don't want. So the key then is for politicians, whether they are at local level or national level, for them to find out what the people don't want, and then think about what they want. Now, at what stage do you start to think about maybe stepping a little higher? If you're a local councillor, and now there are some local councillors who just, the seat is handed down to them from generation to generation. Their father, the fathers before them were politicians, and so they automatically win that seat because they're a generation of politicians. Some of you would know, if you're from Ireland, you know how that works. You say, oh, his father, his grandfather was a politician, and people automatically just vote for them because it's a family of politicians. But times are changing. And if you're not that kind of politician, if you're the kind of politician, a local politician, a councillor, who really wants to hit the ground running and really get to help people and bring about a change, you get frustrated when you're trying to change something and there's a lot of bureaucracy in the way. I'll give you an example and wrap up with that. So as we were coming out of COVID, to the stage, okay. Oh, apologies. Okay. I'm wrong. When a lady runs in her heels, it's urgent. So, just the example I wanted to use to explain that. Just as we were coming out of restrictions in Ireland, one of the things I started to think about from my town of Navan, I've lived in Navan for I've lived in Ireland almost 22 years. And I've lived in Navan now almost 17 years. And I love Navan. Like, I'm a Navan girl, really. And I'm going to grow old in Navan. Now, as many times as they call me a blow-in, I always say the wind blew me in the right direction. So, I'm stuck in Navan, and I love it. And so, I'm very desirous to see a change in the look of the town. So, when you come to our town, how many people have been to Navan Town Center? Yay! So, you know Navan. So, when you come to our town center, you know, it's an old town. Our structures are somewhat old looking and all that. But we can merge the old with the new, right? Bring a bit of modern life and help draw tourism into Navan. Very possible. So there's always a conversation about how do we drive people to come and shop more in Navan. But it was all talk. So I thought, why don't we start outdoor dining in Navan and get people to shop, sit down, summer will be great. And when I brought this to the council meeting, to our municipal district meeting, all my colleagues kicked against it in a nice way and said, do you know what, Yemi? It's not going to work because people in Navan really don't, you know, the business people are not going to support this. We're used to the same old way. They're going to complain about the car parks, you know. And someone indirectly told me, but you know what, you're blowing, so you'll never understand. Not in those words, but stylishly digged into me at a meeting. And I thought, I'll show you what's possible. I'll show you I'm a Navan girl, and this town is mine as much as it is yours. And what did I do? When they told me the business community will not support it, I went to the business community. The very guys I was told will not support it. I went to them and I said, hey guys, they told me you won't support this. But this is for you. You know I don't own a shop in this town. But this is for you, and these are the benefits. And I went directly to the Chamber of Commerce and asked them to call a meeting of all the business community. The first meeting we had, with 10 business owners at the meeting, I signed them all up. And I told them, so this is my idea, but this is yours now, own it. Now go out as disciples and speak to every business beside you who are non-hospitality. Bring them on board. The next meeting we had 18 businesses signed up. By the time I brought this as a motion to my district meeting, we had 32 businesses signed up. And it was unanimously approved. And today, if you come to Navan, you should come to Navan. Our streets are lined up, it's like you're in Italy, it's like little Sicily. You know, with outdoor dining, beautiful meeting spaces. Why am I sharing this? There will always be the people who are stuck in the old ways, in bureaucracy, in structure, old structures that don't change nothing. And you get frustrated. I was frustrated. But I think being a people development strategist helped me, and and I put on my strategist hat and went to the right, and the council, I worked with the council as well. So if that didn't, when I was struggling with all that, I started thinking, about time I get my colleagues in Parliament on the dole to bring about a change in policy so we can have this. 2 weeks after I brought the motion forward, there was an announcement announced by the Minister for Enterprise about 17 million euros for outdoor dining. And I told my guys at the council, don't get 200,000 euros of that money. And that's how we got our job done. So, I hope I answered your question.
We've already gone national level for 3 or 4 months there. And hopefully go national officially and get a seat run for Parliament. So I thank you very much, Ian. That was a lovely answer. And just beware that we have tea and coffee now. If anyone needs to get a cup, please. We're going to take a 10-minute intermission. Get yourself a cup of coffee, cup of tea, whatever. Martin and Karen are going to entertain us, keep us awake. Not that we need to be after that, but anyway, some of us are, older people like myself, talking a little bit. So we'll have a couple more people just to let you know afterwards for the next presentations. The 2 of them are on video, so you're going to have to get yourself a strong cup of coffee now because we're back to the Zoom days again. But hopefully it won't be that bad, so we'll be well caffeinated and able to take in inspiration from Reverend Dr. McComish and from Reverend Fraser Harris, who's going to regale us with some stories of his incredible life, and hopefully just 10 minutes though. And if you have questions, final big reveal quick, the keynote speaker, Parsons, Mr. Honorable Keith Best, who will bridge the proceedings after also with John Albright. And if I can get Stanley as well to either ask a question or give up the presentation if you have time. So please help yourselves to take off. Thank you, everybody. Could I get a round of applause for the musicians, please? All of us, for Karen McMahon. Thank you so much for the wonderful lively music keeping us awake here today.
Mayo connection, just Mayo connection. Up Mayo. Oh, yeah, gotcha. Up the road.
Okay, so yeah, we're very grateful to our musicians from Cavan, and I'd say they'll be touring around the country now that the place is opening up, so you catch them in any of the local trad venues in your areas.
We're back to normal.
And he's a real, Martin, you're a real Cavan legend, and we're very privileged, Karen as well, to have you here today. Thank you so much for supporting Peace Road. So if you want to get your coffee, get your biscuits, and take a seat, and we'll continue and try and get through the rest of the programs. I do want to ask our dear friend and Peace Ambassador from Cavan, Stanley from Virginia. Derry, did I get that right? You have to forgive us, all guys, for the pronunciations. They are absolutely abysmal, they're terrible. So, I want to fit in a few people like Stanley, who at very short notice was able to join us today. I think he was down in Cork yesterday. He's been up and down the country a couple of times, and this is his day-to-day life, serving the community, and we're very happy to have him today. I don't know if you wanted to speak or ask a question. Yeah? Okay, he wants to ask a question. So, sounds very Yami. Oh, it's dangerous. We will never get through everybody if that happens. Actually, if you ask her now what she's going to make up a coffee, you have some chance to get you wrap it up in a minute, okay? So we might put that on the back burner for a minute or two. And Sally will be receiving the Peace Ambassadors Award today, along with Yemi and Glenn. Maybe around, if we could get that done around 10 to 5, 5 to 5. A few photographs and what have you. A few other people as well. Karen and Martin will be getting the Peace Ambassador Awards today as well. So we thank you guys for your contribution. And I'm sure I've left somebody out for Peace Ambassador Awards. Take up. Where are you? Have I forgotten somebody?
I have to check the list. Give me a couple of minutes. Give me a couple of minutes, I'll check it.
Anyway, forgive me if I've forgotten you. So I might ask Pastor Eli Lowe to do that, or Chairman of UPF Ireland, to do the presentations at as close to 5 as we can, because I think we have to be out of here at 5, although I think the staff have been very good to us today, and very friendly and very helpful, so I think they just, they won't be pushing us out the door hopefully, but they probably have another function or something lined up. Pent up demand for functions after COVID. So our next contributor, guest speaker is David Fraser Harris, who has spent many years in UPF and the predecessors of UPF in the Middle East, based, I think. I remember when I first joined UPF affiliate organisations here, the Unification Movement, in the early 90s. I was based in London for a while, in Lancaster Gate, and I'd always hear tales of the Middle East coming from this mythical figure, David Fraser Harris, and I had all sorts of images in my mind of this gentleman. And to be honest with you, I wasn't let down when I got to meet him for the first time just a couple of years ago. I think it was in Korea. And I was delighted when he said he would come and share his heart with us about his, I would call it, missions in the Middle East and in Scotland, where he's based. He's a man who has been educated in Unification Theological Seminary, as Reverend Hannah has as well. So he's incredible wisdom, but he's a great diplomat as well, having worked in the Middle East for so many years, and a font of knowledge. But I hope we can distill that and disperse it in 10 minutes or less, which some of the pressures on the program today. But I hope you enjoy his contribution today, and please, if you have any questions, this man is an expert. I can't think of a more qualified person to talk about peace, conflict resolution in the Middle East, particularly, where he's worked extensively. I think he was based in, was it Lebanon? Or Cairo? Yeah, all those areas, all of the above. Yeah? So, and he still travels there regularly, frequently, and is organising programs which he will tell. I'll let him explain because he obviously has a particular message to give us. So let him. Do you need anything? Do you have everything? Okay. So let's put your hands together for a Reverend David Fraser.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute. Ah, yeah, I've unmuted now.
We're zooming you.
We used to live in a city which is very appropriate for the ending of COVID. It was a city called Damascus. This is my first time to Northern Ireland, as I'm told to pronounce it. I managed to visit Dublin in 1969, my second time in Ireland. And I've learnt Irish because I can say Colin O'Kearney. So I'm learning. Keiko and I came from across the water in Scotland, and there's just near where we live, in the borders of Scotland, there's a hill called Tinto Hill, and if you climb to the top of it, they say you can see Ireland. Well, I have climbed to the top, but unfortunately I didn't see Ireland. So we thought we'd better come instead. So we thought, let's take the bridge, but that doesn't exist yet. But I hope you've seen the writing about the bridge. It's exciting to me, the idea that that may be built one day. It fits with the Peace Road idea, doesn't it? That we can really build a way to get through to the Monaghan Tyre from the north of Ireland, something like that. So I'm looking forward to the day when that comes. And then I looked up, because I'm completely ignorant about Ireland. I'm not going to pretend I know anything. So I decided to look up a little bit. And I found out that our MC has the same name as the patron saint of Derry. St. Column, am I right? Consul. So the patron saint is here. And he, of course, went over to Scotland and changed us forever. I mean, St. Columba. The great history, starting in Iona, which is all over Scotland. So we have a great debt. For better or for worse, wherever we go, we find ourselves meeting with a legacy. A legacy often of our own and our families and our nation's ill deeds in the past. So I do not come to speak here lightly. Dealing with ill deeds or dealing with the past of our countries, as Councillor Yemi told us, has to start at home. So it does. My wife is from Japan, which used to be an enemy nation to ours, and we are building peace starting in the home. While we were based in Damascus, we did a project in 2004, which was in Jordan. And I went to explore the possibilities for the project. It's part of a program you may well know called the Religious Youth Service. And we brought together mostly Muslim and Christian young people to do a service program in the city of South, outside Amman. While we were preparing, I went with one of my students from the American Language Center in Damascus, whose name is Firas. He's Palestinian. And we went to visit the mayor, actually the deputy mayor, in a particular town in the north of Jordan. And I went also with a Japanese colleague, the three of us. So the mayor the deputy mayor started to make a speech and say all the good things, all the wonderful things that have happened in Jordan because of the Japanese and the British. And I smiled and I leant over to Firas and I said to him, when he finishes, tell him I know what your grandmother says. Firas's Palestinian grandmother says, everything bad in Palestine came from the British. we have a lot of making amends to do, and there are many ways to do it. One way that has been very stimulating for me is the Religious Youth Service program, which I just mentioned. I have stories that could go on for a few hours of that, but I remember one in particular for the moment, from the time we were in Hungary. Are these bangs because I'm too close to the mic? Yeah. Yes? So I'll go back a bit.
We lose the volume if you go back.
Okay, so I'll stay here then.
Yeah.
Okay? Should I be further back, like this? Okay, anyway, we'll keep going. It's up to you.
Do you want to try this mic? If you.
I just don't like the popping. I don't want to upset everybody with a popping noise. Okay, I'll move out here, but I have to use my nose. Forgive me. Story from Hungary. In the reflection time, in a 1,000-year-old monastery near the Austrian border, one Jewish girl just came to the reflection moment, and she said, "You did things that nobody else would have done for me. But in this time, I lived all my life every day. I see Muslim, I see Christians in Jerusalem. I've never spoken to them. But here in these 6 weeks, they became my friends." So this is an example from 30 years ago. We've done a lot of programs with football. I had slides, but I realized it's not the time to show you more of those. But we've done a program called Play Football, Make Peace. One of the stories is how we managed to bring a team from Gaza through Israel to Amman. And they had a wonderful experience, just playing football with people from the other countries of the region. Recently, our UPF Israel have taken teams into San Marino in Italy for 5 years. And we're developing a new program now, which will happen just 2 months from now in Dubai, together at the time of the Expo 2020, where they will bring just a group of children, school children, from the Israeli and Arab parts of Israel, together to have a bonding experience in the United Arab Emirates. At the same time, a spin-off project, which is called Champions in Life, is a program that's run by a friend of mine called Robin Graham. He runs this program training coaches to teach virtues when they teach football. And that program is operating at the same time in Qatar this November. And we're going to have one of their graduates team up with us so that the next visit to Dubai next year will incorporate the football element as well. We've done a number of conferences over the years. That's probably an understatement. I think of a string of conferences about Syria. One of them was in Geneva in January of 2014 when there was a major conference going on the other side of the same lake, and we had our own one. And one of the speakers there was our next speaker here, Reverend McComish. And another speaker at that conference, bringing together peacemakers about Syria, was Myrene Maguire, famous Nobel Peace Prize winner from Ireland. It was good to have her. In Cyprus in 2016, we did a conference bringing together both sides of the Syrian conflict, members of the Syrian parliament who came with the knowledge of the president, and members of the opposition from many countries. And they sat down and talked to each other as brothers and sisters together. And the former defense minister of Austria said he'd never seen such a hopeful conference in his life. This was a real bringing together on the level of family. And I believe that's what UPF does very well. We bring together those who don't usually talk to each other. Another example, which is indirect, this is not actually our work, but at a recent event of ours, we called in a speaker from Bahrain, the founder of the Bahrain Foundation for Dialogue. You may or may not know the foundation, established around 2012, after the time of the Arab Spring. If you know where Bahrain is, between two big powers, right? Iran and Saudi Arabia. It's got a Sunni government and a massive Shia majority right there. So these two, very unstable after the Arab Spring. Hence, Bahrain Foundation for Dialogue. Why am I mentioning it? It's not our project. Because he came to Northern Ireland to know how to make peace. He told me, he said, I went to South Africa and then I went to Northern Ireland to learn their lessons for making peace. I'm not going to take more time except for one point, which is this morning between 10:30 and 11:30 we had one of a series of events we're doing about Afghanistan. This one brought together the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, the former Vice President of Afghanistan, a former member of the United States Congress, and UPF representatives from across the world. I was focusing on this, so I said, sorry, I can't be with you. But that was a 1 hour high-level dialogue opening ways to go forwards. Another thing we're looking at is how to bring the Islamic interfaith approach in. In other words, how to bring an Islamic dialogue to engage the Taliban themselves. We've got a long history of doing interfaith work. And if you look at UPF going back to the time 20 years ago in Nepal, when we actually sat down with the Maoists and were part of rebuilding the country there. So I really believe we can do a lot. We don't have any illusions as to how difficult it is. But I want to take my hat off to you as a country that has paved the way for peace building. It's an honour for me to be in Ireland, and thank you for having us.
Thank you, David Fraser Harris. And David, I think, is it the Chairman and Secretary General of the Middle East? Secretary General of UPF in the Middle East. Is that correct? Yes. Amongst his many titles and responsibilities, so I'm very delighted that he could join us, and he's been helping us in the organisation, and that he could make it. I was so happy that he could make it today. And well, I'd love to have him back at some time in the future to give us a proper exposition of all of the work, but he's a very busy man, very much in demand, so we'd be lucky if we can get him back. But you don't leave it so long to come to Ireland again, please. How many years since you were here last? In Dublin? Oh my God. He's only across the pond in Scotland, so big round of applause for David. British gentlemen, as all our guests today, ladies and gentlemen, we're very grateful to have you all supporting our peace run. So we had two video recordings, which unfortunately, Reverend Dr. McComish, he was, to use an expression, he was doing his nut to get here, but he was told it wouldn't be advisable for him because he's not a spring chicken anymore. He was told maybe better sit this one out, and due to his health and COVID and everything, it's difficult for people to travel these days. But he will very graciously agree to record a message for us, and I'm delighted that we have that. So I would ask you all to try and pay attention. I know it's moving on a bit. It's Sunday afternoon. You're probably used to doing other things. If you're me, you're on the couch watching a match or something like that, but or watching a movie. So if we could dim the lights, thank you, Danny. And so you have a long bus journey ahead of you. Some of you have journeys back to your respective households, and I'm still conscious that we want to get a few more people in. What's the time at the minute? Time check? Okay, so we have an hour and 7 minutes to go through 2 10-minute presentations, plus if Stanley wants to say a few words, I'd be delighted to have a few words, and then we might throw open the floor if we have time until 4:45, or time when we're doing the Peace Ambassador Awards. Throw open the floor to some questions. Is it a bang off that still, David? Is there off the... Yeah. 1, 2. Is that better? Okay. Watch my consonants. Alright, I'll try. And Keith Best will be wrapping proceedings up. Honourable Keith Best, and we're glad to have him. I know he's much to share with us, and that man I don't think will be able to keep 10 minutes, so that's, without further ado, I don't know how much you know about Reverend Dr. William McComish, but I'm not going to introduce him because he introduces himself much better than I do. gives you a sense of who he is. But he's a colossal figure in the world of, I guess, Christianity, Protestantism. He's from Northern Ireland. He's a son of Aaron and a son of Norn Ireland, as we established anyway. So he has a very interesting heritage and a very mixed background, but he is a colossus in what work we do, conflict resolution and peace building, interfaith work. And I'm delighted that he wanted to contribute to the forum here in Northern Ireland in Derry. And maybe we'll have him physically in the future. If he can come here, that would be fantastic. But who knows? Let's just hear what he has to say. He recorded this message especially for us. I hope he can get a chance to see through the Zoom or through future recordings what the reaction is. So if you have any questions, can I ask you to keep them maybe until after the second recording? Make a note, because we have also John Alderdice, Lord John Alderdice, who is also going to give a recorded message after Reverend McComish. So we're okay with the lights, are we?
Good day. My name is William McComish. I would like to thank the UPF for their invitation to be a keynote speaker. I'm sorry not to be able to be with you in person, but it was just too complicated to make the transfer from Switzerland to Derry City. So I will begin by asking myself, to an extent yourselves, the basic question: how has one of the most beautiful countries in the world, which is Northern Ireland, with a very intelligent and hard-working population, become an extremely unhappy and frightened place? Now, my attitude to this problem is that of a participant, not that of a casual visitor who has listened to propaganda of one sort or another in the first pub that he visits. What are my qualifications for speaking? The first is that my family have lived in the north of Ireland for centuries. I was born in Armagh. I grew up in Belfast, so far as I grew up, and I attended the Royal Academy for 14 years. I then moved to Trinity College Dublin as my university before Geneva, and Trinity awarded me a BA and an MA. So my family has been seen in various roles. On my mother's side, there was Henry Joy McCracken, who was hanged by the British for armed rebellion after the 1798 rebellion. And I have a grandfather who signed the Ulster Covenant in 1912. My father was one of the group that founded the Alliance Party. My mother had distinct Republican views. I was heavily involved as a peacemaker in the riots in 1969, and for many years afterwards on the peace line in the New Lodge Road. I was a prison chaplain. I knew many of the leading terrorists who were in prison, including the Christ Sisters. I've been under fire for many times, and if I accepted a post in Geneva, which was meant to be temporary, in fact it turned out to be permanent, it was because it took my children away from a situation of considerable danger. So I was not an observer, but a participant. is the basic problem in the north of Ireland? To me, it is that the population is living through self-generating myths about the past, fantasies, but these are autodynamic. Part of the basic problem is that the Irish in general, and the Northern Irish in particular, have a great sense of history, but no sense of perspective. This is unoriginal, but profoundly true. The Irish potato famine is seen as a British crime that happened yesterday. It actually happened nearly 2 centuries ago. Both assertions being incorrect. I always think that one good introduction to the Irish situation is to read Sean Casey's Shadow of Gunman. This is the basic commentary of a Dublin Protestant on Irish attitudes to the past. Now, these are 2 magnificent traditions: Irish nationalism and Ulster unionism. Both grew out of different versions of 19th century nationalism. These traditions have both created their own ethos. For one, the Ulster division of the Soil, and for the other, the Irish War of Independence. The problem is that they haven't involved much. But the world has changed. Both, it seems to me, are out of context today. The world, as I say, has changed. Both define themselves in terms of the pre-First World War British Empire, for and against. But the empire is long gone. Another important reality is the fall from grace and power of the Roman Catholic Church in Ireland. Always a Protestant fear. There is a European Union. There is Brexit, the fall of communism, the rise of China, Daesh. There is a British Prime Minister who readily breaks international agreements he has just signed and whom nobody trusts any longer. This situation is light years away from that of 1912. Britain has, I suspect, a thinly veiled desire to get rid of Northern Ireland, and the Republic, with its very hard-won prosperity, is generally mistrustful. The Northern Irish have only themselves to blame for this situation. They have been very inward-looking. They have largely created their own prison through seeing the world exclusively in their own terms. Now, what are their own terms? Fear and victimization are the essential terms that largely define unionist and Republican basic attitudes. The Unionists have always been afraid of Republican numbers, Catholic families with great numbers of children. This was not totally unreasonable in the past and was, on occasion, encouraged by Republican leaders themselves. The Unionists have always been afraid of losing their majority, which led to gerrymandering in Derry City, among other places. the Republicans have seen themselves as victims, not always unjustified, but often exaggerated. In modern times, and I am talking about recent events, the Irish have not suffered anything like other peoples. The Cambodians with nearly 3 million deaths between 1975 and 1979 with Khmer Rouge. Rwanda with maybe 1 million massacred in 1994. The Vietnam War, Syria, Ireland has suffered, but not on the same level. But whether motivated by fear or victimization, it is time the Northern Irish realize that they actually mean little or nothing to the rest of the world. Virtually nobody is interested in them. Justified or not, fear and victimization remain a basis for belief and action at the present time. Now, I have often asked myself, if I were a dictator, I should resolve this situation. The best answer I find comes from my own experience. Almost by accident, I came to Switzerland, first to study for my doctorate, and later on to live and work in Geneva with my family. Now, Switzerland has a much greater basic problem than Northern Ireland. There is a history of civil war. There are 2 main religions, and that is compounded by having 4 national languages. Yet the pragmatic Swiss have created a very happy country where nobody is afraid and nobody feels a victim. I see no reason why their solution shouldn't work in the north of Ireland. Switzerland is divided up into self-governing cantons, each with its own identity, traditions, and laws. These cantons then to come together for major important matters such as defense and foreign policy. But as a solution, it requires enormous imagination and fresh thinking. Who is going to propose a solution of this kind? I would think those who profit from fear and victimization, and there are many. Most people in Northern Ireland only want to get on with their own lives. Many are afraid of the future with an ongoing unease about civil war and civil disobedience. Some people define their lives on that possibility. Some enjoy it, even work for it. But to find lasting peace in Northern Ireland, we must not seek to contain the impulses for hatred and violence, but to eliminate them by eliminating fear and victimization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. McComish. I'm not sure if he's listening, or we have some Swiss participants watching us on Zoom. Eli, do you know if Ira Henshaw is there? Yeah. Okay. So I was, I watched this already, and yeah, it's food for thought. I think it's tough medicine, as our founder used to say, paraphrasing him. But yeah, I think fear and what was the other one? Fear, victimization. So I think Keith might rebut that later on, in part at least. I mean, it's true, but it's. I think sometimes if you're away from, we live here, we have to live here. So I think we also have a eagerness to. It's often not that simple, and I think. But I really do. I'm grateful to Dr. McComish for his perspective, which is incredibly learned, and I'm so happy he recorded that piece for us. And I think it's good for us to study that and see how can we plot our future where fear and victimization are no longer. The impetus, the impeti, whatever the word is, that drive people forward and seek to profit from such negative realities. So I'm going to go with John Overdesk now. He was the Speaker of the House, John Overdesk, in one of the probably the most famous Speaker of the Northern Ireland Assembly when it got back up and running in 98 or 99. I always get confused because we visited the unification movement. Were in Belfast in 1999. We had a peace garden project at the time. I think it was the monastery, Kerr Monastery or something like that it was called, or Columbanus or something. I can't remember. Some people were at that. I see Patricia Iverson was at it. So at that time, the assembly had just started off. I'm not sure if Professor Escalona was there at the time, 1999. So I have fond memories of seeing this man on the news every day as this exciting period where peace came at last, and there was celebrations on the streets of Belfast and all over Northern Ireland. Taxi drivers were waving tricolours, and even this, I don't know if someone might have been waving Union Jacks, but there was a peace deal and there was peace at last, and this man was a pivotal figure in that. So I'm very grateful to Keith and Robert Marsh, who's also watching us, I hope, for organising this particular recording. And again, we hopefully get to welcome him in person at some time in the future. But he's doing great work, and I'll let you listen to the work that Lord John Allardyce is doing today.
Communications technology and
so I just have an issue with the sound here. I'm not sure if the hotel staff are around, but I think the controls in here actually control the PA, and some people are struggling to hear it, and some people are hearing a reverb or some sort of a bit. Can you just do a sound check for us and tell me, put up your hand if you can hear it or if there's no distortion?
I'm delighted to be able to join you through the wonders of communications technology and this room.
So you can't hear it, the volume's very low, yeah? This is because it starts low. Yeah, I think you can see it was in the right.
Okay.
Just there are controls in there, but if you want to.
But of course, it would be much more pleasant to be able. I'm delighted to be able to join you through the wonders of communications technology and this recording works out okay for you. But of course, it would be much more pleasant to be able to be with you in person. However, nowadays I
just check is it on the right output
from the in your sounds you have to output through the computer.
That's right.
And it's going through the
was the other one not doing that already? Is it not on that output?
No, it wasn't for the last.
Can you see that? Probably on the right output. Which one is it? Outbound, unbound, outbound, Dolby Access, thinking.
Here. Yeah.
It's okay, we have
It's the AUX cable?
Yeah. It's in. So, is it in the right port though?
Yeah. So, what you'll need to do is you'll need to tell the laptop not to take the sound from the HDMI cable, take it from the AUX. They'll be up on their settings.
In the sound settings.
In the sound settings.
Yeah. Go on.
Well, I'm in the sound settings here, is it?
Open sound settings. Open sound settings.
Sound settings, yeah. That is.
Two up. Open sound settings.
The top one.
This one,
yeah?
This is in there,
click.
It was in there.
The top one.
Top one.
Okay,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah, okay.
And now you choose where the sound should go from.
Thank you very much.
Where I was born and grew up, but I'm not there very much now. And as time passes, all sorts of things change. Good.
Just while we're in this ready, Stanley, would you like to say a few words about your work? Stanley, and again, apologies, the last name is terrible. Is that right? Yeah, Stanley is a very precious friend to many people in this room. He's a real dynamo. He's very busy helping us all with our, problems in Cavan. He's a go-to man for whether you want to set up a course, whether you want to get some training or development, and if you need some help, if you're from a marginalised community of any sort or struggling to find support, Stanley's your man. He has an extensive background in many areas, including, I think he was a fitness coach for a while. You can see, pretty obvious, isn't it? Puts us to shame, if you knew what age he was, it puts me to shame anyway, but that would be hard, but he's a real dear friend to most of us, and I think he is the hardest working man in Cavan from what I can see, although Donald might object to that, Karen, I don't know. But he's the hardest working man in Virginia. Will we settle for that? But I'll let you talk a bit about your work in Virginia, and you helped us very much too with one of our cyber faith roundtables a while back, and I was very grateful to you for that. So just want to tell us a little bit about yourself. Big round of applause for Stanley Montanaro.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks to the Universal Peace Federation and also UPF Ireland. My name is Stanley Montanaro. For those of you that don't know me, you might know me for my community work and also for my MRCR work in Ireland. So it's a long way. All I can say, I am a man that has maybe 5 or 6 hats, depending on what you want from me. I'm based in Cavan. The chairperson, sorry, let me rephrase that. I'm the chief coordinator to 4C presently because we're going to change that. So, like Colin said, 4C is a community group based in Cavan. It's an umbrella group which combines 83 countries, societies, schools, dance group, different kind of orientation of community work in one platform. So that's what FOSI is all about. Like Colin also said, we have different projects. We have back to school, education for adults, Peace Walk project that just finished up. I can go on and on and on. It's just numerous of what we're doing. We're currently doing. It's so fascinating that we were taking a walk and we saw Creative Center, a NAV Center, just across the corner there. We have a project with them, which is currently running. They have to be in Cavan next week with the council and the Syrian refugee. So I'm not going to say much because I can take all day telling you about what FOSI is all about. But I'm very happy and I'm delighted that Colin extended that opportunity for me here. It's been a while that we've been trying to put this together, and COVID kind of put obstacles in between, but we're very happy that we are at the tail end of COVID. So being here is an opportunity for me and an honor to be part of the Universal Peace Federation and Universal Peace Ireland. So I promise to do my best. I'm going to take Councillor Ziemi's quotes that I promised. I sternly promise to play my part in the organization and plug in to promote UPF to the wider public, and also I'm going back to Nigeria on Thursday, so if you don't mind, I'm going to talk about the UPF to my friends and relations over there. I hope you all appreciate my coming down today. Lovely to be here amidst so many new faces, and I hope to be part of this moving forward. Thank you.
So I don't know how he manages to keep so fresh faced. He's actually driving up from Cork, and God knows where he came from. Was he on the bus this morning? Or
it's the Nigerian swag.
Oh my God! Whatever you guys are on, I want some of it, Yeah, thank you, Stanley. We would have put you on the bill properly, but you're such a hard man to nail down and to get. You're in such a demand that we're lucky to get you there today, and we're so happy you could come. And so many people love you and are relying on you in particularly Taliban, but more and more nationwide. You're becoming an inspiration for all of us. So can you, everyone please give a big round of applause. Please you want Derry, please forgive me. Nobody can pronounce my name, so don't be too judgmental. If I don't say your name right, try saying my name, okay? So I think David Fraser Harris nailed it, but I've never heard anyone else, even the Irish people, do it without struggling or asking me all the time. So anyway, it's Tinshkela, as they say. So I'll just play this now. I think the sound is okay. If you want to dim the lights again, thanks, whichever way.
I'm delighted to be able to join you through the wonders of communications technology, and I hope this recording works out okay for you. But of course, it would be much more pleasant to be able to be with you in person. However, nowadays I spend most of my life either in England or abroad. I'm not in Northern Ireland very much. And what that tells us is about how things change over time. I used to be in Northern Ireland all the time. That's where I was born and grew up. But I'm not there very much now. And as time passes, all sorts of things change. It's 40 years since I first ventured into elected politics. In 1981, I stood for the Lisburn Council seat. And of course, in 1981, we were in the middle of the hunger strike. And Northern Ireland was probably more deeply divided between Protestant Unionists and Catholic nationalists than at any time since the foundation of Northern Ireland. It wasn't just that they believed different things and hoped for different things, but they felt profoundly differently and antagonistically to each other. It was a time of deep division. 10 years later, I led the Alliance Party into talks chaired by Peter Brooke, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. And that was the beginning of bringing parties together from across the divisions. And of course, in less than a decade, we had the Good Friday Agreement, now almost a quarter of a century ago. And that agreement did effectively bring to an end the kind of incipient civil war that we call the Troubles. And many people forget the difference that has made. The people say, well, there's still deep disagreement. People still adhere to their communal backgrounds, although in truth that's less so than it was even 20 or 25 years ago. There is a whole generation of young people growing up for whom the history and politics of the past matters much lesser than the practical politics of the present and the future. But the most important thing is that we have discovered how to address our different, disturbed historic relationships and to hold on to our differences and disagreements without killing each other. It's not about agreeing with them. It is about respecting each other, treating each other fairly, and finding ways to conduct our lives and our societies and communities without violence. Well, as I say, things have changed a lot. And in those days, I was very much interested in what we call ecumenical activity, bringing people from Protestant and Catholic backgrounds together. And that was very important. But as I went around the world, subsequently to many other places where there was conflict, I began to appreciate that the differences that we had at home were mirrored in countries and communities all around the world. And in many ways, that world itself has changed enormously, for better and for worse. And now the issue is not one of ecumenical engagement, but of interfaith dialogue. And I think that this is something that is really of the moment. As I say, I spend much of my time now in Oxford at the university, and I was asked last year to become the patron of a new initiative called the Oxford Interfaith Forum. It had its first meeting online, of course, because of COVID, just a week or two ago. And there were some 156 participants in that, representing not just all the Oxford colleges, but 45 universities from around the world, from 26 countries and 6 continents. And what that said for me was that the people who had organised it had hit on something that was incredibly timely. I believe that right around the world, people are thinking about these things because they're anxious and troubled by the root of nationalism and fundamentalism, the threats of violence and war, the economic and environmental and population problems which just seem to get ever larger, and people are trying to look beyond legal solutions. And to understand that while enlightenment principles are very important for us over the last 400 or 500 years.
That's celebrating the peace road.
We should start dimming the lights and flashing the lights here so they see this. I think it might be something else though.
Yeah,
Probably a protest.
We'll own it, we'll own it.
Yeah, we'll co-opt it here anyway. We'll take that. We could close the windows, maybe. Yeah, because otherwise we might find it hard to get through this. Yeah. Huh? There's no need to see this is what passes for protests now here in Northern Ireland rather than what we saw in the past, isn't it? You see the same thing anywhere in England or South Republic of Ireland, yeah? Okay. No.
We have to some extent got to the point where we need to look beyond how we think and understand how we feel and how we relate with each other and the world we live in. There was a great Irish theologian called J. Ernest David.
I feel like he's being heckled. Just give it a minute. I don't know if the Zoom room understands what's going on there. Just for anyone who's on Zoom, there's a lorry, a convoy of trucks outside, blowing their horns, and we don't know what it's for. We're assuming it's for the peace road, but again, we're quite optimistic by nature, so it could be for something else though.
Raising salaries. Raising salaries.
Oh yeah, they're not being paid enough, that's it, yeah. As well as the peace road. Okay.
He religion in this way. Religion is the most ultimate, the most real, and the most compelling form in which we conceive the social or universe relationships and obligations of our lives. And in the case of those who may be called non-religious, it's only necessary to turn the sentence round. The most ultimate, real, and compelling form in which they conceive their social or universe relationships and obligations is their true religion. And as we engage in this question of religion or interfaith dialogue or going beyond the merely cognitive, logical, rational way of thinking, we discover that there are various practices across our cultures which have a degree of commonality. The importance of place is one of those. And pilgrimage is another. Over the last year, I found myself going to Lindisfarne in the north of England, to Thésée in France. Even in the last week, I've been in St David's in Wales, in Glenstal in the south of Ireland, and of course Oxford itself is a traditional place of pilgrimage over many centuries. And later in the year, I will go to Thésée, and back to Rome, and then to Iona in Scotland sometime next year. Because that process of pilgrimage, that walking together, physically together with others, or emotionally and in faith terms with others, to a place, is not about going to somewhere that tells us about the past with its problems, but helps us together to walk towards a new future, a new place, a place which is not just physical, but is a place of better relationships. I think our experience in Ireland, though some people feel that it is still a problem, and of course humanity is full of problems, but it is not a problem of violence and killing. It is a problem of disagreement, the fact that we do not all agree about what is the good for the future, but that we listen to each other, respect each other, treat each other increasingly fairly, and find a way of developing hope and possibility. Because of my experience through the Good Friday reading process, I find myself much more hopeful than many people in other places who have not been through that experience. And I hope that you will get a sense of that hope on your duties and journeys today and over the next number of months. There are real possibilities for the future if we reach out to each other and reach out to the beyond. I wish you all well.
Thank you, Lord John Allardyce, and for those who arranged that recording. I also wanted to thank the Swiss UPF for all the hard work that they did in organising the recording from Bush, and this recording is released by Ron Marsh, UK UPF Secretary General, and also I think Keith, absolutely. And by way of introduction now to Honourable Keith West. He's a dear friend of mine at the moment. I really value his. I had a lovely chat with him last night over coffee, and I love to listen to him all day because he's just a font of knowledge. Particularly, I love history. Maybe it's one of my flaws, I guess. Moving my money. When I meet him, it's just great because I get to ask the questions I want to ask, but most people can't answer or are not interested enough to. Like, they don't teach history really in a lot of cases. It's an optional subject. I'm shocked it's an optional subject now in a lot of schools because it's. Maybe it's a good thing because we need to move on. You know, as Dr. McComish told us, history can be, condemn us to always thinking about the past. But I think if you understand history well, you can learn a lot from it. And I think he takes opportunities when he's visiting places like this, former theatres of conflict, and I used to work former in a great sense here. He was here in Northern Ireland at a time that I remember when I was a teenager, a young lad, when there was conflict everywhere. It was, it was a time of incredible pain and suffering for so many people, and so many people are still living through that every day because they lost loved ones. And he lost people that he loved as well. I mean, I don't know how well he knew Derry, Margaret Thatcher's closest, one of her closest confidants, I believe, at the time. He will tell us all about his experiences and his view here and his sharing with us. But I just wanted to really thank him for this event today, because he's the inspiration behind it, Keith Bass. When I joined the education movement, I realised that there's many, many wonderful, true gentlemen and women in England, and he's typical of that. And how to heal my heart and make me believe there's hope in the future. And not to be dwelling on the negative stuff all the time. But many people want change. Many people want, a future where, validate each other's identities and try to find solutions. Sometimes it feels like there's no, it's really miserable. 1980s Ireland was a miserable place, full of unemployment, full of conflict. And it was pretty grim in many parts of the world. But he was an MP for many years, representing a constituency in Wales, I believe, although he's been based in London most of the time. So he's a true blue, and I respect him very much in terms of his outlook politically. He served on many, many organisations. Prisoners Abroad, I think was one of them, and we're very grateful and very lucky to have him in UPF, and he's our UPF UK chairman, I believe, is that right? Yeah, amongst many other jobs. So I'm delighted that he's going to come and speak to us tonight, because I think he has the kind of bird's eye view on everything that's going on here at the minute, in not just our kind of part of the world, but generally in terms of what we need to be doing to make the world a better place. He's the World Federalist. He was involved in the World Federalist movement, still is. A very high position there. And his work is all about building bridges, building unity, because he is a man who knows history. It's inspirational to see that he's not dwelling on the stuff. He's not counting the score, who did what to us when. He's looking at how can we fix things, how can we make things better for everybody. So can you please give a big warm round of applause to Honourable Keith Bass.
Well, dear friends, can you all hear me? That's the most important thing. Secondly, it is a real pleasure and a real privilege to be here in a city and a province which has seen so much change, so much sadness, so much trouble, but has such an important message to give to the rest of the world. And that is why we're gathered here today. I hope you feel that already today this has been an interesting and an informative conference, and I hope it will inspire you to go out and do, as many of the speakers have said, to actually spread the message more widely. Now, I was first elected to the British Parliament in 1979, and I found myself surrounded by political giants like John Hume, Seamus Mallon, Jerry Fitt. These were all people who towered above so many others. They were from a particular tradition, but they were all men of intense integrity. And from them, I learnt my interest in Northern Ireland. So I was really pleased that the first job I was offered in Parliament was to be the Secretary of the Conservative Northern Ireland Committee. It was chaired by John Biggs Davison, who wrote a history of the Troubles in the book still available called The Hand is Red. John was an unusual, committed unionist who actually was a Roman Catholic, and you didn't find too many of them around at that time. But I learned so much from them, and I came over here for the first time during that time when the Troubles were at their peak. And I remember going to the British Army headquarters in Lisbon and seeing, to an enormous sense of shock within myself, a army post, a police post sandbagged from floor to ceiling with rifle slits and netting across the top to stop bombs and grenades coming down into it. This was part of the United Kingdom. I had never seen this anywhere before in my country. And it was a deeply moving time for me, and I've never ever forgotten it. But you know, we are so much wiser with the benefit of hindsight. We can see clearly how we could have avoided tragedies, which we see only with the clarity of history. But do we really learn so we do not make the same mistakes again? Sadly, history indicates that we do not. But hope springs eternal, and the more we have conferences such as this, the more we can examine the past and draw conclusions, which, if we then promulgate them, can at least alert our leaders and opinion formers and the wider public about the dangers of current or potential actions. 100 years ago, the Anglo-Irish Treaty concluded the Irish War of Independence and ushered in the Irish Free State. Sadly, that also brought further conflict and bloodshed, of which this island has seen far too much since its beginnings. This morning, I walked to the bogside and I went to Free Derry Corner, and I looked at the posters, the slogans and the memorials that are there. And if anybody has not been there, go. Because if anybody thinks that history is the past and has been forgotten, go to Derry Corner and you will realise it's living with us now. And we must deal with that. We must deal with that. We must look at those things and learn from them. Because as Glenn said, next January the 30th marks the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And I remember seeing the memorial there and learning from him today. If you go there and see the memorial to Bloody Sunday, there is Patrick Doherty, aged 31, the first name of the 13 who were killed during Bloody Sunday, Glenn's father. It's a very moving experience. And the aftermath is still felt. And having served myself in both airborne and commando forces, to my mind, their use in war as shock troops means that it was a terrible and misguided decision to put them into a situation in support of the civil power. It was almost inevitable that something along the lines that did happen could have happened. That does not condone what was done, but demonstrates how insensitivity can make its own contribution towards tragedy. Forgiveness is the key to reconciliation, as we've seen so poignantly in South Africa and other countries which have suffered deep conflict. I was struck by the comments of one of our participants in the UPF meeting in July, who said that she could not see how the Belfast Good Friday Agreement could have happened. I believe that she is not alone. Anyone who studies conflict, especially within a community such as a civil war, or where neighbour is pitched against neighbour, will understand the abiding sense of enmity and injustice that prevails down the generations, which makes any healing process so much more difficult. That makes the agreement even more remarkable and valuable, to be nurtured and not easily traded away. How many could predict during the bitterness and bloodshed of apartheid that there would be a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa? Yet it happened. I knew Eric Lomax, who suffered at the hand of the Japanese and wrote The Railway Man, which was then made into the film of that name with Colin Firth. Many of you may have seen it. He was a patron of Freedom from Torture, of which I was the chief executive. His loathing of the Japanese was so deep that he would leave a restaurant if a Japanese entered. Then, by chance, he was able to meet his principal tormentor who had tortured him. You all will know the story of how they became reconciled, and the book which he wrote ends with a memorable comment: remembering is not enough if it simply hardens hate. Sometimes the hating has to stop. In 1984, I was present at the Conservative Party conference in Brighton when the bomb destined for Margaret Thatcher and the Cabinet killed, among others, my then parliamentary colleague, Sir Anthony Derry. His daughter, Jo, whose journey will be well known to many of you, has recently published a reminiscence. She said, 2 days after the bomb killed my dad, I realised I hadn't just lost my father, who was very close to me, but I also felt I was catapulted into a war, into a conflict, and I couldn't go back to being the person I had been anymore. Part of me died in that bomb. I could feel the pain of war, the pain of every bomb which went off, the pain of terrorism. I made a very silent, private vow that I would find a way to bring something positive out of what had happened. And I'd find a way to contribute to peace. I would also try and understand those who had killed him. A new journey had started. I had a choice: to be revengeful, have an enemy to blame, or take responsibility for my feelings, give up having an enemy, and understand those who had killed my dad. The moving story of how she then contacted Patrick McGee, who had been charged with the bombing, and the many platforms on which they have appeared together, is too lengthy to relate here. In this month's edition of the Uniting for Peace newsletter, Jo Berry, who is also the founder of Building Bridges for Peace and an executive committee member of Uniting for Peace, wrote, I believe in the power of empathy, for when I empathise with you, I want for you all I wish for my loved ones and me. Being empathetic is a call for action. When we see beyond the individual situation, when we are not attached to any truth, when we know the truth of all narratives, we create a new story for the world. This new story sees humanity in all and asks us to challenge behaviour without blaming, judgment or violence. Then the question is how we prevent violent conflict, heal conflict and build bridges across the divide. How do we create a peaceful world? For me, Jo encapsulates that enigmatic injunction from the Sermon on the Mount. But I tell you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who mistreat you and persecute you. The words, I forgive you, are easily said, but carry enormous import. In one respect, they represent a personal sacrifice, because they involve a conscious relinquishing of a search for vengeance or justice, which sometimes can amount to the same thing. For many, that is something to which they continue to cling. Yet forgiveness can also represent giving up a burden, because hatred and resentment can eat away at the soul. They can become so enveloping that they can change a personality. To shed the burden of continuing resentment can be a release, as many have found. It can lead to a seemingly impossible situation in which perpetrator and victim can work together in a common enterprise. In 1993, Lindy Fourie was killed in the Heidelberg Tavern massacre in Cape Town, aged 23. 9 years later, her mother, Gin Fourie, heard a radio interview with a man who had ordered the attack, the former director of operations of the military wing of the Pan-Africanist Congress, who was in Cape Town to promote his biography, Child of This Soil. She went with what she described as a justifiable right of revenge. But listening to him, she then realised that he was at heart not an evil man, and when he took responsibility for the attack, she admired his humanity, integrity and spirituality, forgave him, and they ended up working together on the Lindy Fourie Foundation she set up. Beyond that, at his invitation, she went to his village and asked forgiveness for the impacts of colonialism, which ultimately had incubated the apartheid system. She not only gave up her justifiable right of revenge, but also showed empathy for the historical wrongs that gave rise to the current hurt. The foundation now works around the world. There are so many stories, such as these, in which forgiveness and reconciliation have broken down mistrust, hatred and deep enmity, that it has to be a model to which we must work. Yet, as the previous story brings home, we do not operate in a vacuum or just in our own time with our own experience or injustice. We are creatures of our history, which passes down the generations, and although we may not like that history, we cannot disown it. We have to face it and deal with it. As it was put so eloquently by Amanda Gorman in her poem, The Hill We Climb, at President Biden's inauguration, we close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must put our differences aside. Then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. She spoke not just for America, but for the world. Peace is a delicate flower that must be nurtured. St. Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, and we heard from St. Matthew in the prayers this morning on the Peace Walk, tells us that in the Sermon on the Mount, Christ enjoined us, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Peace is desired by all, but is an elusive concept in humanity, which is so often motivated by a sense of competitiveness, acquisition, entitlement and mistrust that, unless tempered, can translate so easily into conflict. The eternal truth, however, which is there for all to see and which is examined in this conference, is that peace cannot be achieved without reconciliation, without a coming together of former antagonists and a discovery of common ground that unites rather than divides. It does not mean that we must all think alike, pray alike, be alike, but it does mean that we need to understand those around us and what is behind their aspirations and views. Now, I am a barrister by profession, and part of my training and practice at the bar was always to put myself in the place of my opponent. Not, I hasten to add, for altruistic reasons, but in order better to know the other side's strengths and weaknesses that I needed to meet or to exploit. Yet in so doing, I came instinctively to learn why people held views with such vehemence from their own perspective. Most barristers cut their teeth in magistrates' courts, often dealing with motoring cases involving two drivers after a collision, and it was amazing how too many people could honestly have such totally conflicting accounts of what actually happened. Yet so often it was the case that they were individually convinced of the veracity of their own story. Partly this is due to the way in which the mind plays tricks with us. And that every time we recall an event, we are not actually repeating the same circumstances, but are reconstructing the event in our own mind, each time informed by new evidence as to whether one car was a particular colour or not, or the sequence of events. This is a proven scientific thesis. We cannot possibly remember every tiny detail we see, but our memories would feel incomplete if there were big swathes of uncertainty. So the brain fills in the details as best it can, borrowing from other memories and the imagination in order to build what feels like a complete picture. That is hardly the basis for establishing a common position. So it is that we must rely on external factors that we trust to ensure that we are not proceeding on a self-induced false premise. So in conclusion, let us learn from history and learn from each other, and know that the true strength of character is not mere assertion and a self-assured certainty, but an understanding of our own frailty as human beings and the expectations of others, so that, as Martin Luther King Jr. said in his address on the 22nd of March 1964 in St. Louis, we must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Keith Best. And again, I'd like to reiterate, this Peace Road, Derry, could not have happened without you, and I'm very grateful. I think we should all give another big round of applause for being the inspiration behind this and for your work on behalf of UPF UK and UPF Ireland. Glenn Doherty has rejoined us after his tour, so thank you, Glenn, for coming back. We're going to do some Ambassador of Peace presentations. I think we have a few minutes, so while we're just maybe doing that, I'm going to ask, if he's still in the room, Eli Lowe, our chairman here, to do the presentations on behalf of UPF Ireland, and I think Dr. Hannah might like to step in as well and just be part of the photography on that one. If you just be careful with those because they tend to scrape when you're moving. So first up we have, who's that? Abood Al-Jamali. We're so happy you could join us today, and we want to present you with your ambassador. So after you get your award, if you want to go up to the stage, just maybe go on the right hand side and then we'll take a photo together. Just if you have any questions as well for the panel, the speakers, just put up your hand or stand up and I will. Who's next? So, Martin Donoghue. Karen, do you want to get some awards? I'm really grateful for your contribution today. And not just today, Martin and Karen, but you bring so much life and vitality to Cavan through your music, I think. And I think we suffered a lot during lockdown. We didn't have entertainment, we didn't have live music. And you guys are the spirit of Cavan as far as I'm concerned. A big round of applause for Karen and Martin. Thank you so much. If you want to make your way over there. And what have we got here? Thanks. Mr. Alleluia, Deji Alleluia, are you in the house? Would you like to take? This is behind every good woman is a success. Is behind every successful woman is a brave man. As my wife will testify. No. And Yemi as well. If we had Yemi to do it together, or should we complain? Should we give it out to you? Do we have Yemi? Oh, Karen. Sorry, Karen as well. We didn't get Karen's one yet. Yeah. Karen McMahon. Big round of applause. And do we have over on the window, Kimja? Thank you. Then go on the right there, we'll just take a shot of everybody. And I'd like to ask Keith Best as well if you could take the stage as chairman of UPF UK. And so we have Stanley. Stanley Yemi, don't be shy, come up here. And again, I'm still conscious you might have a question or two, so don't be shy. We might have a minute or two. Glenn Doherty, no up here. Bonfire, Northern Ireland. All rise in the please. And as Keith Best told us, he visited Derry Corner and he was able to see the tribute there to your father. So thank you so much, Glenn, for making it today. Is that everybody? Everybody? Yeah? So just if you know some good people in your community that would like to become peace ambassadors that understand the mission and work of UPF, please let us know and we can invite them to the next event. And the more peace ambassadors, the better. The more chance we have of getting world peace and peace in Ireland. Peace, shalom, salam alaikum, shir khan. Let's go. Peace code, Derry, 2021. Thank you all. Safe home and God bless you. And if you have any questions, please stand up. Burning questions. I want to know. I particularly just enjoyed Glenn's, and I'm very grateful to him. And I feel, we were in safe hands with all the speakers today. And some of the video tributes were a bit challenging. You missed them, Glenn, but I think Dr. McComish's experience in Northern Ireland, where he had to leave, probably was informed the rest of his life. So I don't know, you might have a chance. If you have a chance to watch back the videos, please do that. Check out unification.ie or upf.org. I think I'm very grateful to you all for making such an effort today. And this has been recorded, so there will be a chance to look back and reflect. So if there are questions that you have afterwards, please, email me or email UPF unification.ie, and we'll chase up whatever sort of queries or inquiries you have, or if you have any good contacts that you want to tell them about our work, please do that. Do you have any observations?
Shall we give a big round of applause for Colin McKenna here?
Thank you, Dave. Okay, so I'll just wrap it up then if there are no questions, because you all have a long journey to go home. And thank you everybody for supporting Peace Road Derry 2021. God bless you. Good night.
Get